What is up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Superdraft Breakdown Show here on Rotogrinders. I'm Turd Ferguson. I'm going to be bringing you some of my best plays over on Superdraft. Haven't signed up for it yet? Making bad life choices. Sign up using the promo code Grinders. Get a free $150 deposit bonus. If you deposit $150, that's free money. Pretty much, you just put the money in, you play through it once, and then it's yours to do whatever you want. You can keep playing, which I would highly suggest, since you're not going to find more overlay than you do on Superdraft and any other DFS site out there. They just got a partnership with Caesars Entertainment, same Caesars Entertainment that bought you Caesars Palace over in Vegas, pretty much brought you The Hangover. And yeah, so that means they're going to be getting Caesars rewards points for all your play over on Superdraft. Going to be fun events, VIP events. I just went out to Vegas not too long ago on Superdraft's built on Caesars Entertainment's dime. Absolutely fantastic program. Fun, and it is very easy to play. I'm going to be breaking down everything. So again, get signed up using the promo code Grinders. And we're going to be breaking down everything on this NBA slate. We got a nice few contests out there, an $18 one, a $4 one, a $1 one, a $100 one. They got cash games. They got triple ups. They got double ups. They got everything you need over there. So get signed up, get that free money, best deposit bonus in the industry right now. And today's slate, honestly, one of the tougher ones I've seen. One of the ones with the most possible pivots. A lot of times you're going to get guys at 60, 70% owned because people just run the opto. Not going to get that today. As you can see, the median projection for Damian Lillard, the highest median projection, is only 10 points more than like the 30th guy, John Collins. So I just have pretty much RG's median projections, floor projections, ceilings projections transferred into this document, as you can see right here. And then I put them into median, floor, and ceiling here, times it by the multiplier over on Superdraft, and boom, have everything that we need to kind of help build and guide our lineups. Obviously, there is going to be stuff that comes in throughout the day that is going to change things, but there are a lot of guys that should remain good plays throughout the entire day. I mean, Damian Lillard, I know it's a tough matchup versus the Lakers. I know he's had a rough two outings, but Damian Lillard should remain a good play throughout the day. He makes a decent tournament pivot, but I think that there's a 90% chance that he ends up in my cash game at the end of the day. Like, as you can see here, blue, green mark guys. Blue is kind of your cash game core. Green is more GPP plays and pivots off of the potentially higher owned guys. So you get three guards, you get three forwards, you get one center. So we're going to start off with center. And guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop it into the chat right now. I'll try and get to it. Doesn't look like there's too many of us watching, but this is evergreen content for the rest of the day. So not evergreen, just the rest of the day. So if you have anything you want to see on this video, anything you want me to go through, then go ahead, drop in the comment section. I'll look at it throughout the day or later on the day or before the next show, and we can try and get it in for the next show. So yeah, just looking at center right now, Mason Plumlee, 1.6x, matchup versus Sacramento, the worst defense in the league. I don't see how he ends up getting crushed here. I think that he's been getting so many rebounds, been getting so many points, been getting so many assists, everything. 1.6x is way too high of a multiplier. They haven't adjusted it for a while. You can play him at the forward position if you want to throw Cantor in as your center, but Plumlee is pretty much the top center play on the slate at this moment. Even with Jeremy Grant coming back, he'll still have his normal role. It's still going up against a subpar defender in Holmes. He's a fantastic play, and he's probably the top play on the entire slate. So, yeah, Plumlee is where I'm going at center for cash and likely for tournaments, an extensive amount, but I can play him at forward, like I said. So you still can use Cantor. You still can use Valanciunas. You still can use Clint Capella. It's a good matchup for Capella. They're going to have Roby out there. He should end up getting 45 points, which is enough to take down a tournament. And he has upside for 50 to 60. We've seen him put huge numbers. The last game, he didn't have a ton of minutes, and that's mostly because the game was a complete and total blowout. So, yeah, Clint Capella is probably my favorite tournament pivot on the slate here. I think that he ends up crushing in this game if it stays close. So I'll use quite a bit of him, but I'm probably bringing it back with a guy like SGA, maybe throwing in Trae Young, because the way he doesn't end up getting there is if it's a blowout, because he's going to be one of the first guys where they end up throttling back his minutes. So he's definitely in play for tournaments, one of the better center plays on the slate. John Collins, 1.5x, just Like if who is it? Reddish ends up getting ruled out, we could see some extended run for him. Same thing happened last week. He was on his way to having extended run, and then he got into a little bit of foul trouble. So he's a definite tournament play. Wendell Carter Jr., he's been crushing. Over 40 fantasy points in the last 2 games. Matchup versus Phoenix. Ayton doesn't do great defensively. Like very clearly a decent matchup versus Phoenix, and way too high of a multiplier. So these are kind of the tournament guys at center. Center's a little bit easy. Bam, obviously, if he gets ruled out, don't play him. But if he gets ruled out, I could potentially see playing Gobert. Matchup versus Olynyk, yes, he'll have to be brought out to the line a little bit more with Kelly Olynyk being a stretch 5. But it's definitely a better defensive matchup than going up against Bam. So as of right now, I don't really have him in my tournament consideration. But if Bam ends up not playing, then I think he's in there. Ayton, like you can play Ayton. He's not making my cut quite yet. So yeah, like this is kind of where you're at for center. You can go with Harrell. If any number of injuries happen, maybe Gasol, but most likely you're only playing 5 or 6 centers. It's real simple here. You pretty much play Plumlee and Cash, and then you pivot off of him in tournaments to these guys, or you play Plumlee at forward and you can play one of these guys, because Cantor matchup versus the Lakers, it's not great. Like it's a slower pace matchup, but Cantor is an all-around great offensive center. 1.5x is too high. With Superdraft scoring, it's pretty much a mix between FanDuel and DraftKings. So 3.5 points for a 3. Same scoring as DraftKings on triple-double, double-double, assists and rebounds, but you get 3 points for blocks and for steals, and you get -1 point for turnovers. So the higher multiplier guys, like if you get a guy that's a 2x multiplier, every steal now is worth 6 points. So with a highly variable category like blocks and steals, getting a higher multiplier guy that can get 4 or 5 of them can have a massive effect on it on any given night. So something to keep in mind, especially with centers, especially when there's going to be a super chalky option. So I would highly suggest looking into Valanciunas and Cantor in tournaments, especially like J-Val, even on second mid back-to-back. They have been a little bit restrictive on his minutes, but he can still crush on a per-minute basis. So that's pretty much where you're at on center. Forward, a little bit different here. We got the main guys that I want, like Sga and Levine, way too high multipliers. Like they are fantastic plays for cash, decent plays for tournaments, depending on what their ownerships are going to be. Sga has been playing out of his mind recently, been crushing, and Levine has eaten up all usage. Even in a slow-paced matchup versus Phoenix, even in a tough defensive matchup versus Phoenix, he's the majority of the offense. He can go off for a massive game at any given time. LeBron, same thing. Even with Schroeder coming back, LeBron still has a ton of usage in there. Without Anthony Davis, it's a good matchup going up against Portland. I don't have a ton of interest in him over on DK because of his price tag, but yeah, at 1x here, with all the other multipliers being a little bit lower than they normally are, he's a cash game stable, most likely a guy that I'm going to end up using in cash. Jeremy Grant's a potential guy because of the matchup, because of the lower multipliers on these other guys. Sacramento is the worst defensive team in the league. 1.4x is probably too low. Draymond Green, 1.5x, with his double-double, triple-double upside, he can absolutely smash on any given night. He can end up with a 45-point, 50-point night just without even getting many points. So Draymond Green, definitely going to be a guy that is in my GPP core. Going to end up a lot of him, especially when I can bring it back with guys like Gordon Hayward, guys like LaMelo, guys like Rozier. And I can pair in Curry, because Draymond and Curry don't really have a negative correlation. So Draymond's probably got one of the highest ceilings on the slate. We look here, his ceiling, his 80th percentile outcome or 20th percentile outcome is 80. That's higher than anyone else outside of Jeremy Grant. Plumlee, 1.6x, already talked about him. You can use him at center or forward. Kawhi is a little interesting. It's second of it back-to-back. We haven't gotten news about whether anyone's going to end up sitting. So 1.15x multiplier, not as high as we'd like, but if Paul George ends up sitting, he has 60-point ceiling and a 1.15x multiplier where he can get several different Sorry, getting random things on stuff. 1.15x multiplier is definitely enough to give him a little bit of upside. Sadiq Bey is currently questionable. We'll get news about that. But 1.x multiplier, a guy that can get a few blocks and steals, a guy that can get the 3-point bonus, like it seems like it's too high of a multiplier. I know they hasn't fully paid it off recently. I know that he hasn't done real well, but 1.8x multiplier is too high. He can end up crushing if he ends up playing. If he doesn't end up playing, that definitely gives an uptick to guys like Plumlee, guys like Jeremy Grant, guys like Justin Jackson, or Justin Jackson, not Justin Jackson, Josh Jackson, who are all going to be in play. Already talked about it. Paul George, if Kawhi ends up sitting, then Paul George becomes a decent play. Jimmy Butler has triple-double upside. I'm worried about this game staying close, but if Bam ends up missing, Jimmy Butler comes squarely into play. John Collins, 1.5x, already talked about him. Guys like Holmes, not really getting consistent run. Wiggins, with everyone back in there, he's fine, but not great in a decent match versus Charlotte. Isaiah Roby, 1.75x multiplier, not bad. Harrison Barnes, 1.55x multiplier. He's got 45-point upside. You look at his game log over the last 10, he's had 4 games of over 45 points or over 40 points, and he's had 4 games of under 25 points, I believe. So he's a guy that is very volatile, makes sense in tournaments. A match versus Detroit that's not a very good defensive team. Someone on Sacramento Kings is going to end up blowing up, I think. Most likely, I think it's Halliburton, but potentially Barnes, Bagley. Josh Jackson, already talked about him. If Bey ends up missing, potentially he gets into the starting lineup. 1.65x, definitely too low. Wendell Carter Jr., already talked about him. And then it just kind of goes into not great options. Like Kuzma, if he gets the starting nod, maybe, but with Schroeder coming back, gives a little bit of a bump down to Kuzma. And 1.65x, maybe not high enough to get you there. Montrezl Harrell, already talked about him. Kyle Anderson, limiting his minutes. Patrick Williams, high multiplier, but probably not the best option on this slate, especially against Phoenix. Markieff, not going to get run. Gallinari is an interesting one. If Reddish is ruled out again, potential bump to him, and this high enough multiplier, there is a scenario where he ends up being one of the better plays on the slate, but that's pretty much forward. Like, you're going with these main guys right here. And the obvious plays, like the main decision you have to make in cash is whether you're going to play him at guard or forward. Guard, a little bit interesting. Like, you got Lillard, you got Trae Young, you got SGA, you got all these guys right here, which is why I'm planning on using these 3 guys at the forward position and not at the guard position. Because Dame at a 1.1x multiplier, even a tough matchup, been chucking without McCollum. He's been crushing on every given night. Trae Young has been consistently great recently. Gives you a ton of upside. Can go off in any given game. The spread is low enough where I think that he's definitely still in play. Devin Booker, 1.4x. Too high of a multiplier going up against Chicago, one of the fastest paced teams, one of the worst defensive teams in the league. Like, he's a cash game stable. I'm going to try and throw in here. But even LaMelo against Golden State, second fastest paced team in the league, 1.25x. He's got 60-point upside. He's got triple-double upside. This multiplier is too high. So cash, as of this moment right now, will probably be these 3 guys at forward, Plumlee at the center, and then 3 of these 4 guys is likely where I'm at. But things can change throughout the day. It's worth noting that you should wait on and see who's in and out, but likely this is going to be the cash game court tournaments. Rozier's had multiple games where he ended up shooting over 20 shots. Like Donovan Mitchell, 1.3x multiplier, probably too low. I think that he's a guy that should end up crushing, but this game also could be a blowout. So he's a guy that's only in play for tournaments. Ja Morant, kind of the same thing. It was a blowout last night, second in the back-to-back. He's more than likely going to end up in the low 30s, high 20s minutes. Any number of things can happen. De'Aaron Fox always offers you a massive ceiling, but this multiplier is a little low to be considered a core play for me. Steph Curry can always go for 70 points, 1x multiplier, probably not making it. I really like Halliburton in tournaments. He's been turning it on recently, has 45, 50-point upside. Match versus Detroit, not a great team. Game should stay moderately close on the second end of a back-to-back, and he's young. He'll still get run. Chris Paul, I think, is probably the better tournament play than Booker. He's the better overall player. At a lower multiplier, he's going to draw a whole lot less ownership, but still has a ton of upside. Oubre, Conley, probably not making my build. Schroeder coming back, I'm worried about his total minutes. but at a 1.65x multiplier, if he gets a full amount of run, he has a decent amount of upside. So I'm definitely considering him in tournaments. Josh Jackson, already talked about him. White, Maldon, not really guys that I want to go with. Guys, if you have any questions, we're getting towards the end of this, so go ahead, drop them into chat. Let me know. But the last guys that I'm really considering are Dennis Smith Jr. and Saban Lee. I don't have Saban Lee highlighted right here because I'm not really sure who's going to get more run. Dennis Smith Jr. got more run in the last one because very clearly, like, they didn't have Jeremy Grant. They need a little bit of extra. They didn't have as many bodies, as many scores. So they just gave Dennis Smith Jr. more run and didn't have anyone else running the point besides Lee and Smith. They were just automatic 1v1 swaps. So I don't know if that's going to continue. A matchup versus Sacramento is a good one. Huge multiplier 2x. If he gets 30 points, especially if he gets some blocks and steals, then he can end up with a huge outing, be one of the top players. We see his ceiling here is 73. His floor is 24. We don't know what his minutes are going to be, but when he's on the floor against Sacramento, he should crush. So Saban Lee, Dennis Smith Jr., both of them are in play for tournaments, but that's pretty much it for Superdraft. Again, guys, get signed up using the promo code Grinders, get a free $150 bonus. Just, yeah, like, it's that simple. Dennis Smith Jr., all these guys are in play for tournaments. For cash, you're pretty much doing this build right here. You're doing 3 of these guards. You're doing 3 of these forwards, and you're probably throwing Plumlee in at center, or if you want to, you can throw Cantor. But that's the build, guys. Again, let me know anything you want to see on this in future shows. Get signed up using the promo code Grinders. Get all the perks that offered. Get in these contests today. Almost certainly going to overlay, but we're out of here. See you, kids.